Johnston, 320 Homestead, Spring Park, Spring Creek, Longmont. Thank you. So I might address a couple of things before I get to mine. I visited some people here that do not like the door situation. And you moving things where they don't have some things there. They were addressing that to me. And I thought I would tell you that in a nice way. Another thing they were telling me in a nice way is that when you made some changes a long time ago, and then at the village place, they told me they asked what they would like. They said that you never asked them, so I thought I'd tell them in a nice way. I told them that they said, "Don't you mention it?" And so what I'm going to talk about is a serious problem we're having over there at health. I'm a nice lady, and I'm getting older, which I'm going to be 79. I don't look like it, but I'm having people that are calling me, asking me to bring them home from the hospital, wait on me, do things for me, help me, and I can't do that. So there is about 5 of them that's doing that to me. Now, we need to pay attention what we're moving in, pay attention to the people getting so down that then the police have to come, and then the social services, and they're laying on the floor. I knocked on one's door that I share a paper with, and I told her I didn't have but a few minutes because when she first moved in there, she came to my place at 9 o'clock, stayed till 12, and she wanted to do different things, and I just was nice. That's all I could do. So anyway, I didn't know she was laying on the floor. She said, "My phone isn't working. Tell another lady." Another lady went and put her a note. She didn't answer, so then she went down there, found her on the floor, had to get somebody to come and get her, and then they took her for a while, and then she came back. But when she came back, she was calling me on the phone because she thinks I'm a nice lady or blah, 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 and asked me to bring her home. She's 300 pounds. How could I carry her? How could I? She can't get around. She can't walk. So how could I do that? And that's where certain ones are there. So I just want to address that. That isn't good. That's not safety. And you need to pay attention to what you're bringing into, because that's not good for us. And the other thing is, I was asked, my friend didn't come with me today, the cameras on each side of our place. People are coming in, staying all night, leaving before people know, and doing this quite a bit. You know, as we get older and precious, safety is really an important thing. I don't think I could knock somebody off if they started getting unkind. So I think I love where I live, and I don't like that they're trying to up my rent to a certain extent. They've already done it once, but I also feel like that I have, it'll be okay situations that I'll work out, because I like it. It's a nice place. I like the people. I want to be a blessing to the people. I don't want to be an unkind neighbor, because there are neighbors there. And also, Fall River, a lady told me about somebody upstairs above her that was staying up all night in his 70s, carrying on, and she went up there and told him, "If you want to be 25, move someplace else. We're trying to sleep." So I'm just addressing nice things, and not to be unkind, but we should care about our neighbors and care about people. Thank you very much for listening to me. Lord bless you. If anybody wants to ask me a question, they can.
Thanks, Georgetta.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to back up to the minutes because I forgot something, which is that in 6, we're taking out the,
Correct. So we'll move item 6B to next month.
okay. All right, put my glasses on so I can see. Okay, LHDC asset transfer update.
So I'll take this item. We met with I should back up. For about a year plus, we've been working on transferring the assets from LHDC to LHAAB. LHDC, the Longmont Housing Development Corporation, was set up originally to be a 501c3 nonprofit arm of the LHA, which really did end up being advantageous when the LHA team was self-developing, self-performing their development, which is how Spring Creek and Fall River were built. And they were a good development arm and financing tool, and they are connected to a lot of the ownership structures for multiple properties in the LHA portfolio. So when we were doing the whole switch over to the city in about 2020, the development really had kind of halted after Spring Creek and Fall River. And so they were just wanting to, they knew that everything in LHA was moving to the city, and there's a reorg happening, and so they thought that it really made sense to transfer the assets over to LHA. So we brought on a legal team that did a legal opinion and said that that would be advantageous for certain reasons. There would be certain things that we would probably have to work through, which I'll get to in a moment. So for about a year, we researched the organizational structures of each of the properties that they're involved with, which include Hearthstone Lodge, Fall River, Spring Creek, Chrisman 1, and then the land next to Hearthstone and Lodge, and Village Place. So we were working on all of those things. So Village Place is automatically getting transferred to LHA through the re-syndication, and that's really the natural way of it, where LHDC is on the ownership structure and the development process, and then once it gets to that 15 to 20 year re-syndication period, they transfer the asset to LHA. That's how this property, this is how this property got into LHA's ownership structure. And so Village Place would be taken care of that way. We already took care of the land next to Hearthstone and Lodge because that was sold over to LHA to enter into that development partnership. So we were left looking at Hearthstone Lodge, Fall River, Spring Creek, and Chrisman 1. So we have the legal team start work to see what would need to be done, what types of permissions we would have to get from investors and lenders to switch over the LHA into that ownership structure. For Hearthstone and Lodge, we knew that this would probably need to come with an exit from the HUD 202 program and a transfer into the LHAAB program. So we have talked with HUD, we've kicked off that process and kind of had that first informational meeting. That would be really advantageous for LHA generally because of the budget structure at Hearthstone Lodge and the way that our vouchers could work there. So that is something that we do want to do. And we're thinking that that is possibly a 2024 project, potentially 2025, because you have to time it very specifically with the budget cycle for HUD, and it does come with likely a rehab project and a refinance loan. So it is a development project to do that. So we need some time to plan that out. For Fall River, Spring Creek, and Chrisman 1, that's what the attorneys were digging into for a while now, because we had to getting a whole suite of investors and lenders and everyone talking about this. So for Spring Creek, it is possible to do it, to transfer it over. Chrisman 1, it would actually be really good to transfer it over because the entity is right now set up as a corporation that's taxable, and we would like that to be an LLC that's non-taxable entity. So that we are pursuing. But generally, Fall River was the stickler. LHDC, this is getting pretty technical, but there's a related party debt issue. And basically, in order to solve that issue, if LHDC wants to disband and transfer the assets, then we would have to bring in another 501c3 corporation, which means we either partner with a community housing provider, could be Boulder County Housing Authority or Thistle, but we really thought that we just want to keep it in-house. If that's our alternative, then why not just keep our 501c3 we already have? If we need to tweak it to make it work for those board members, then that's what we could do. So we brought that question to the LHDC last month, and they all three board members that we currently have agreed to just stay on as the LHDC, still work on some of these transfers over time, but for Fall River, we really would have to wait for re-syndication, which wouldn't be for another, it was just construction completed in 2020, and so it wouldn't be for another 12 plus, likely more than 12 years. And so what we talked about with the LHDC is keep them on. If they needed to shrink down to kind of a skeleton organization, they could, but they weren't interested in that. All three of them said, now that we're developing, we have things to actually work on and do, and we're interested. So that's the plan. And we talked to them about using their status as a 501c3 corporation, which is kind of morphing into item 4B, to set up a foundation so that we could accept donations for a variety of purposes. Out there, the Boulder Housing Partners has a 501c3 arm that has specifically a tenant services fund, and we could do something like that. We could also have a separate fund that is like a development donation arm that we could use. So that's something that we want to think about morphing in, because we really could use that. We have donations coming in, but LHA itself is not it's not a 501c3 for accepting donations. So that is kind of the goal, is to stay on, still use them as a development tool for future projects as needed, definitely bring in that foundation piece. So before I ask some questions about creating a foundation, I want to see if there's first any questions about the asset transfer and the LHDC organization.
Part of the issue, I think, when we started the transition, they weren't doing a lot of work, and they were like, we want out. We want out immediately. Their tone has changed dramatically, and to the point where they're like, we're here as long as you need us, even if we only meet once a year, which was a significant change. The foundation piece they got really interested in, and then I'll let Molly go on that, but we don't have the pressure that they were placing on us in terms of transitioning. That's the big change.
So for the foundation, we are wondering, there are similar foundations in partnership with the city, the Friends of the Library, Friends of the Senior Center. We're going to start chatting with some of them, because this staff team has never set up a foundation before, but really we already have the actual entity, the 501c3. It's more of we need a fund, and then obviously a website, and need to have some capacity to do some outreach to get donations, and that might be morphed in over time. Right now they're kind of coming to us, or it's kind of ad hoc, but eventually we would like to have more of an established donations fund. So I was going to ask if anybody on the board, this board, had any experience in setting up or running foundations, or even just accounting for foundations, because we could use some expertise. But I don't know if you did.
One of the nonprofits that I sit on the board for in Jefferson County is a foundation of a larger organization. They're actually separate, they're two different corporations. And we are actually looking at how to merge them together, because historically they've operated separately. Part of that just has to do with other changes within that industry. So it's a developmental disability resource center is the organization, and they're going from case management and service provider. There's a whole change in that industry that's going on. So that's part of what's driving it, but I'd be happy to coordinate at least a call with their ED, and maybe they can explain it a little bit better as to why they are morphing back into one versus being separate.
And how they're doing it?
Yeah.
That would be great. I'd appreciate that. So this is something of we don't know if this is a I think it's a short-term goal to just get the fund set up, and then a long-term goal to grow it and be more mature of a arm of LHA. But that's what we want to do.
Yeah, and the other thing we talked about with them is there hasn't been a need for a CHODO in a while. So that's a community housing development organization. We're starting to see, we're starting to see more funds be available in different ways, and so that's another piece that we're trying to wrap our head around to see, do we just keep it and morph it, or, but there's no hurry, which is good. We're still just moving forward.
I think we've got the basic architecture, just if we wanted to set up a fund so we could actually take in donations, but then develop it over time. We're also thinking about, they might be a resource if we need that type of entity when we're thinking about on the city side affordable for sale projects, because that's where that kind of that Jodo stuff comes in as well. So that's the idea. So I'm glad it's got a good direction forward.
Good, okay. Development and project updates.
I'm gonna take this as well. So first I wanted to give an update on the project-based voucher award, since we all discussed that last month. The board at their July meeting did agree to conditionally award the full request to both the Ascent at Hover project and the Apple Commons project, contingent on tax credit award. So if they're both awarded, then the Crispin 2 project, which we were kind of holding 8 vouchers aside for them if it was needed, then that would not go there, which we've already talked to that team and they're like, that would have been just icing on the top. It's not totally necessary, so we're good. If one or the other is awarded tax credits, then we will send the PDBs to them. And if that second project that's not successful wants to keep applying for tax credits, we could still keep that together. Or if it converts, if it's Atwood is not successful and it converts to market, then we could just pull it back. And if neither are successful, then obviously we just look at it again. But that's the decision that was made, just to move back around. And then general development updates, starting with Village on Main. Things are cooking right now. So we are having our first design meeting with the architects and the residents this afternoon. So I welcome anybody to attend. It'll be at Village Place at about, is it 4? 3:30 today. And so that's when, this is kind of the fun part for residents, where we're gonna show layouts of flooring and cabinet examples and start talking about what people's preferences are. And then next week, we set up if not, we're setting it up, the resident meeting with the relocation team to start talking about what that would look like. We're still finalizing exactly what the move out schedule would be and how long people would be out, but it's getting nailed down every day here. It really is being driven by technical construction things, like the entire building has one water shut off. So if we wanted to do plumbing work in one unit, the entire building water has to be shut off, which is really not ideal for construction or long-term maintenance. So we're gonna go ahead and install shut-offs for stacks of units, so that only 3 at a time in the future would have to be shut off if one has to be worked on instead of the whole building. But that does mean we'll have the whole building shut off for a period of time, like a day we're hearing. And so we're thinking about, on that day, which will be in January because it'll be early in construction, bringing everybody over to the senior center and hosting a lunch or something. So getting that figured out, and then once we have the water figured, then we're having to figure out electric meters, and that is what's driving the relocation schedule, because it's how we're phasing the work. But we are figuring out that we're going to phase similar to here, where we're doing a wing at a time. So it'll be 6 rounds of temporary relocation. But they don't have the UFAS work having as extensively, that will be as extensive as it was here. So those people that live in the accessible units won't be out for as long as they were here. It will just be the same as every resident. So we're nailing that down, and then gonna bring that out to the residents here this month.
I have a question. Mm-hmm. And I know this will probably come up later, but now we're talking about Village Place. My understanding is that there's one unit that is going to be, that is in process of remodel right now, re-syndication, that people will be able to see, is that correct?
So we're working on that. It will be a demonstration unit. What we're doing right now and what we're sending to the board for approval next week is like a pre-purchase agreement with the contractor, because generally they don't want to buy all their materials until we have a contract. We don't typically sign that contract until we know that we're closing, finance is all set up, and everything's going. What we're going to do is bring forward a pre-purchase contract so that they can go ahead and order certain things that are long lead time and get things ready for that demonstration unit. So we do intend to still do that, but we got to get this contract signed first, and that should happen here next week. Any other questions about?
Did we ever find out what happened with that unit, Lisa?
Yes, it's been a nightmare. So, no contract was ever signed by me.
Can you give it a
So-
background?
So we had a meth unit there at Village Place that the scope of work, after we cycle tested, they put out a scope of work for a contracting company to come in to clean the unit, and we okayed for the countertops, the counters, and the flooring to be removed. They gutted the unit. We found out at a resident meeting last week. Went down, looked at it, it's completely gutted. I went to find the contract. I signed 4 other contracts, but not for this unit. So I reached out to the owner this morning after dealing with the guy who actually gutted it and everything, and I'm waiting for the owner now to hear back from him.
Who's
So-
the company?
Premier Renovations?
It's not the same one that we had the issue with in
No,
Leeds.
no, we're not using that one anymore.
Okay.
So they have to put it back together.
Yes.
Yep. So they ripped out all the drywall, which was not in scope, and I don't know how you could possibly think that was what the job was when we had a clear scope.
Well, that's your money.
Yeah.
Have them just compensate and give that back to,
And we'll just have our guys,
and then we have our guys rebuild it.
we could do that. But that was also going to, was that one gonna be the demonstration unit? I
Yes.
always keep, yeah, so that was gonna be the demonstration unit, so that means we have to pre-purchase drywall too. So,
But that's their, they're gonna have to pay for it.
yeah. Yeah, so,
So we can book it even if we have to pre-record Kendra. Even if we have to pull it out of fund balance, you can book a revenue stream because they have to pay for it. And then we just dog it until they do.
Yeah, we can get approval from the investor to use the replacement reserves, and then we'll just put that money back.
Back into the replacement reserve.
because we certainly don't want this same contractor to put the drywall back, because we don't even know if he's drywall.
So I'm assuming we're not gonna use this company again?
No.
Yeah, literally, we were in the meeting and the residents were like, it's the studs, and we're like, no, it shouldn't be. After the meeting, we walked down and we're like, holy crap, what just happened?
So not only did they do the work incorrectly in the scope, but they didn't even have a contract to start.
But
So-
you said they did other units?
No, I
This
didn't
is
sign
the-
contracts for another company to
Okay.
do other units. So,
We Cycle is our
testing.
testing, and they contract out the cleaning and some of the demo.
Yeah, because they put the whole scope together for us, because they see all the testing levels and know what, based on age and asbestos testing, what needs to be done for each. So they kind of build the scope for us, and they go out for bid.
Which is great until we had this bizarre snafu, so it's another fun problem to solve.
But at least the residents are paying attention.
Yeah.
They said they could see the toilet, and we're like, what? You should be able to see the toilet. There should be drywall. They're like, there's no drywall. So we went in there and looked. So.
Well, if it had to happen at any property, the property is about to get renovated, so at least we have some opportunity there to make it easier. So that's Village on Main. And then for the Hover project, the Ascented Hover and Atwood, since that is also LHA involvement in terms of property management, both of those submitted their tax credit applications to CHAFA on August 1st. So we'll hear about that in probably October, November. In the meantime, we're continuing work on the Hover project on the ECE, the Early Childhood Education Center, and the partnership. We're meeting with Wild Plum tomorrow to kind of go over their model and just really nail down kind of what they need. And then continuing to seek out grant funding. We're doing grant applications for both the Childhood Center and the housing here actively while we wait to hear from CHAFA. I would also say, what other project? Zinnia is, have they started doing foundations or anything yet? I haven't been out there in about a month.
No, they are doing all the utility work, and that should be wrapping up this week so that we can open up the main parking lot again. So.
Okay, great. So not vertical yet. We are working to make sure the suites residents are making it through the construction progress okay, because it's really disruptive. The gazebo has to come down because of the utilities, has that already happened? And so do we have our tent up in the back, our new tent?
No, the resident, because there's a lot of trees, so they just said put an umbrella back there.
Oh,
and we put
okay.
some nice benches back there, so they have a nice little seating area with benches and an
Okay.
umbrella and stuff, so.
Great.
Because they were scared the tent would disappear.
Yeah. We're like, how deep can we stake it? So, just trying to take care of those residents, give them some peace and quiet space and do the best we can. It's really tough on that population though, and permanent supportive housing to have that much just noise and change. So we're trying to work through that, make sure they are still comfortable. And then Crispin 2 is continuing construction. They expect lease up in about January, February. So that's keeping moving on. And I think that is the gist of most of those.
Just this for sale ones, Briarwood and,
So, CPWD, we have signed the purchase and sale agreement. And what they're doing right now is, because it's that entire block on Main Street is really kind of wonky on the property lines. So the building, same with Village Place, same with every building to the north up to the next block. The buildings and the property lines are mismatched. So CPWD is getting some title work done. They're gonna get a new survey because they just wanna make sure everything is solid with their lender to make sure that there's no confusion about that and do they even own part of the property. And it's kind of a ongoing thing in that whole block. So they're completing that and we still hope to close, we're targeting August 31st, but they're just gonna make sure they got all their ducks in a row on the title side and everything's clean. So that is moving forward. They've signed the services MOU, so as soon as that property closes, we'll have those services ready to rock. And then VCP, we're just kind of at this point, for capacity reasons, just holding. We're gonna get the CPWD through, and we've had a couple big deadlines for these development projects, so we'll pick that back up. But the last that they were doing is working on funding sources and that type of thing. When it comes to Briarwood, we are working on making sure that we can, we've got some project-based vouchers there. We're seeing if we can swap those around so that it just makes it cleaner to transfer later.
Downtown.
I know. And I tried to tell them this is not a unique problem to you for CPWD. Like the building is over the property line, Village Place is over the property line. And if there was any investor ownership structure that would be worried about, that would be in the LHAAB world, and it's all fine. So they're just gonna do their due diligence and make sure they have everything squared away. But that's the last thing left, and we'll be working towards closing.
okay. Any questions? We're moving along here. Okay, 6, items for input to the Board of Commissioners.
So for 6A, the city-owned property management agreement. So back in 2019, well, I should say before then, on an ongoing basis, the city, through the Open Space Fund and the Water Fund, has been purchasing land for either open space or for specifically around Union Reservoir for preservation of that area, just to have control of the water source there. Some of those properties that they purchased over time had houses on them. And in some cases, the original owner just leased back the house. In some cases, that owner is also managing if there's an ag lease on it, agricultural lease on it, they're working on that, and so they're still living there. Some of them were vacated. And so in 2019, the Housing and Community Investment and Public Works went to council and got direction to, if we have homes that are leasable, use those for affordable housing. Don't rent them at market rate. So there's some nuance there. If somebody's, the original owner and managing the agriculture, then that person stays. But for the ones that are ready to rent, we've been working on the city side since 2019 to get those properties transitioned over to affordable housing. So we are finally at the point where the first one is ready to go. So we call it the Adrian House. It's over on County Line Road and about 9th, on the east side of the road. And it's surrounded by what's now open space. It's a 100-and-something-year-old house. It's pretty good sized. And so for the last year and a half, the city has been using affordable housing funds to rehab it and get it ready to rent. It's 4 bedrooms, which is, like we've said plenty of times, that's really hard to find here. And we have 1 or 2 voucher holders with an approved 4-bedroom voucher that we're showing to those people, because they've been trying to find that for a long time. So the construction's almost done. All we're waiting is for a gas hookup to be able to close out construction and be ready to rent. And so what we wanted to do is get it all geared up for LHA to be the property manager, since LHA is the expert at income qualification and work with the voucher program and everything. And so what you see in this packet is a management agreement between the city and LHA for the LHA to be that property manager. And so this is different than any of LHA's other properties. Obviously, it's a single family residence. So this is kind of a new world. But it really helps the city's housing goals, LHA's housing goals, and also Public Works, because they don't want to be in the business of managing residential property. That's not their mission either. So it's kind of a win-win, and it's been an interesting process getting to this point. Obviously, construction in the last 2 years has been, especially on a 100-year-old house, has been interesting. But we got it, and so we're ready to go. So this would be the agreement between LHA and the city for the property management, and the lease that we would use for the eventual tenant is also attached. And those 2 things we plan to send to the LHA board next week, and then they would actually go to City Council as well, because it's a lease of city property. So that would be happening in later August and September. So this is still in draft form. We do have, we had voucher team, property management team, accounting team, and legal review it, but we are still making final tweaks here this week if needed, before it goes. But this is the general format of it.
So do you want some feedback on the
Yes, please. On any of it.
Few.
Okay.
On the first rental agreement, item G, number 1. It says a sum of $300, but in parentheses it says $1,000.
Yes. Those are the types of cleanups we are still working on this week, certainly.
There's some
Thank you.
There's some typos in there, it's mostly where it should be ordered, so. Under the resident lease agreement, on section 3, rent, all payments received from residents shall first be applied to demand to payments due to the landlord. I don't believe that's legal in Colorado anymore.
Not anymore, yeah. That was one of the new changes with the last session.
And we do have an MOU between the city's housing division and Public Works talking about how these properties should be managed, with the housing division managing it. And part of that does say what the rental proceeds are supposed to waterfall through. So we tried to mimic that, but make it more specific when this secondary agreement between the city and housing authority.
About a year ago, Colorado changed the law because evicting people for late fees and that kind of stuff, so we clarified that.
Lisa, is that going to be conflicting with our waterfall, or is it can be complementary, we just have to fix it?
You just got
Okay, good. Okay.
Late charges, this isn't a problem, but it was just a question. In here it says $25 or 5%. I think state law allows you a minimum of $50. That makes it a decision. And then, this was just a question for me. Section 10, vehicles, says we provide 3 parking spaces per resident.
This is for the house, not for,
Just for that house.
yes, this will just be for the houses. This is not for the apartment communities.
Yes, this is a separate lease format.
And the only other one I had was just another typo, so I assume somebody will pick that up.
Yes, that's still going final cleanup this week. So what's different from this from our master lease for the LHA properties is obviously single family house. We have things like garages and yard work and just different liability, utility responsibilities. So those are the main things that have changed, but let's make sure that we do the final read through for anything off of the new master lease that was updated with the new law.
On the property management agreement between LHA and the city, so 8% of the monthly rent, I don't know what they're planning on renting it for, but I gotta assume it's a relatively small number.
So the payment standard for the voucher is, what is it, 3,000?
3,007.
Okay.
But when you do the utilities, I think, deduct the utilities, I think it came out to about 2,600.
So this goes without asking probably, and you guys already looked at it, but $240 to manage it, is that enough? Coming back to LHA?
So that is what and 8% is a pretty typical.
It is very typical.
But on one property, yes, it is. It seems very small, but it's just one unit. The 8% rate was also written into the MOU that council approved. So to modify that, we'd have to take some extra steps. So what Kindred did build in though is we have the 8%, but we also have like lease up fees, and there's something else to help cover that staff time that in those special periods of time. But
yeah, so you'll see in the management agreement in the very beginning it says for lease up you get $150 and you get some additional costs. I don't think this is going to be our first property doing it all by itself, so we're going to have one unit. And well, I guess we'll see exactly how it goes and how.
Yeah.
But the management
and if
property.
If it's really that those specific numbers aren't working, we can update that MOU in time as before we take on more, because there are others in the pipeline too.
Well, and part of it is because it's on open space. I think that one's on open space, right? Our open space staff will probably also help manage it in the sense of they're the ones that are going to be out there on a more regular basis, combined with our rangers.
Yeah.
And so I think we're trying to figure that out because there will be this symbiotic relationship with that group and with this group, and that I don't think we're going to need to be out there all the time. And so we're going to learn through this, and we'll adjust the MOU as we're moving forward. Sure, if we see issues.
And that is separate and apart from anything needed for maintenance or replacement reserve.
Well, so that was going to be my follow-up piece. So who is responsible for the actual project management of any updates or rehab that has to happen between things?
So that would be LHA using the replacement reserve. We're also going to put a lump sum in the replacement reserve to get started, but that would be LHA. But then anything, they pull it all from rent proceeds, and then they work with the city on anything that's major needs to happen.
Yeah, their respective funds are the owner, and so their fund balances are the resource to do that. And so that's where we'll be going to if there are issues we need to deal with.
Sure. A lot of property management agreements like this, they also include, in addition to the 8% monthly, they'll include a project management fee for a project, like if there's a certain issue, because you have to coordinate getting plumbers out there and other things.
So that should be the city's housing division, because we have the rehab expertise. LHA has the management expertise. The city housing division would do any rehab work, which is what we've done to date.
Any of those more major, they moved out and
Yes.
the plumbing hasn't been working for 6 months, we didn't know about it.
Yeah.
That's the CDBG rehab division, and that's actually who did the rehab work on there. And so we would just do an interfund transfer within the city to cover any costs we needed to.
Got it.
Can I ask another question? Lisa, on the new law 1120, one about the 30 days and mediation and all that, the lower incomes on 50 now. Are we going to put anything about that in our leases? Obligation?
No, because some of the things that are required, it depends on their actual source of income.
Right.
Like now with the writs, from the 10-day or the 30-day writ, depends on what their source of income is. And it can't just be Social Security, it has to be Social Security disability.
Yeah.
So I think going into too much of that's going to be too, and it doesn't come into play until we actually serve or are gonna go file, so.
So would we do anything specific for those clients, like an addendum to the lease?
No, because I think it's just standard, now it's, for us, it's gonna be our standard protocol. So it doesn't change anything that we're doing.
I just did one, we're just in the middle of an eviction, and, I think, so it's on the 10-day demand now, like if you have these sources of income, whatever. The problem that we ran into is that the language in the law is tenant shall immediately notify landlord of these sources of income. And our attorney was like, what is immediately? Is that 5 days? Is that
It's up to the
24
judge's
hours? Is that-
interpretation.
That's the
Well,
problem
so I'm
entirely.
wondering, so our lawyer said, in your lease, put an addendum, immediately in our lease means X, 24 hours, 48 hours, 72 hours. And that way, you're covering, because the language is so incredibly vague, so instead of reading it up to the court, maybe try and preemptively, so I guess just a subsection under your eviction, just say, if you have these timely sources, tenant is required to notify landlord within 24 hours of the time that you post it. And that way, that's how we're doing it. I don't know. I mean, we'll see, but that's how we're doing it.
You can put that in the definition section.
Okay, you can put it, we're just putting it in our legal language in terms of like eviction, who owes legal fees, blah, 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 subsection, whatever, A, B, tenant must notify landlord within 24 hours of receiving 10-day notice in writing that they received these sources, and then it takes away the legalese. This isn't the legal term.
Yeah, it's really, right now, the legislation changes and legal, and I know from the Boulder County courts to the one in Longmont, just the judge's interpretation of the law is even.
So trying to preemptively like take that out of their hands, well, this is what we wrote in the lease, so it wasn't a defined period by the actual lawmakers, so we're defining a period ourselves.
Have we decided are we gonna use City of Longmont, or are we gonna pay ODR?
I don't think, I haven't heard an update from Susan on that.
Last time I talked to Susan, I know she's still talking to OCR, but I know Judge Bush, they went to the Chief Justice of Boulder County, and she said as long as, this is my understanding of what I read, as long as City of Longmont and City of Boulder follow the same criteria that was given to ODR, which is, the 10 days and not charging tenants, that they would City of Longmont could do the mediation back on
Time, Susan said they would have to book, like landlords would have to book through ODR,
I think
and
she
then
was,
ODR would pay the city back for the services. This is all for the mediation
I think
requirement.
that's a discussion that she's having with them. And I don't think that's what Judge Baca said in her opinion, in terms of, but I know Susan's in meeting with ODR trying to.
Yeah, she's
The other
trying.
reason I ask is, I mean, if City of Longmont does it, there's no real cost to us.
Yes.
So we have to go through ODR and then at least the landlord side.
Yeah, we'll have to pay for it then.
Right.
It's
$100 is $100, you know.
$100, and it's up to 2 hours, and it's $250 in there.
Yeah.
Which seems egregiously expensive.
Yes. Especially when the city already offers it for free, so.
Actually,
But we do that for any
But
landlord,
with the
right?
new law change, you can't, we may not be able to use Susan's volume, so that's why Susan's talking with ODR to get an exemption for Boulder County.
but
What? Carmen's over Susan, right?
Yeah.
Sandy. We need to get Carmen and Sandy engaged in this,
Okay.
because this is gonna probably turn into a higher level conversation quickly.
personally, from what I saw from the note from Judge Baca, I don't think from her standpoint, we're obligated to use ODR as long as we follow the same rules that the law. I mean, I agree, the law is, the only thing the lawyers have all agreed that I've talked to, and I've talked to a lot of them, is this is the worst written piece of legislation we've come up with in a
It's
long
just super
time.
confusing, and no one knows what to do.
Even the attorneys are all confused.
You
and
know,
they-
our attorney was like, I don't know, and we just kind of,
Well, we just had a hearing on Friday, and our attorneys were like, well, based on what Boulder's doing is this, but Judge Martin here in Longmont is doing this, and it's literally up to the judge in the courtroom. Because they threw out a whole bunch of cases up in Boulder about a month ago because they didn't do the 30-day, they had the 10-day. And they literally threw out every case that was served on a 10-day for weeks. Wasn't it a couple weeks in a row?
A couple of weeks, and one of the major law firms that represents attorneys represents landlords, they stopped filing stuff for a few weeks, which changed the docket from like 30 cases to 2, you know.
Yeah, we were able to get ours on like
Yeah.
next delivery next Friday, and was like, wow, they must not have had very many sitting, because we got.
Or we've all had to change our process super fast, and anything that was previously served in 10 days, we have to start basically all back over within 30 days.
Yeah. So I don't know
The other
where it's like
problem-
what's gonna happen when we get there.
The other exposure it gives to us and you is that not only does you have it's sort of mediation, but you've got 10 days, you've got now 20 days added to the time. And you've got up to 2 weeks for mediation. Not to mention the 10-day stay on the eviction and on the.
Or a
on the
30-day
anyway,
stay.
Or 30-day stay.
It's depending on their income.
So they could have easily added one or 2 months to the process. So what I tell landlords that would complain to me about is, I just say, if it was me, I wouldn't give anybody any time to screw around. I would make a determination immediately. First time they didn't pay rent or something else, I would drive a stake in the ground. Otherwise, you're gonna be 6 months down the road. And the worst mediations I do are when people are 6 months behind in rent, because of our current rent structure, there's almost no way anybody catches up.
And you can't get fees anymore, you can't take a report on fees, you can't, all that was thrown out. So maybe we do need to look at a whole lease addendum for all these.
We're looking at it. So once I finish with my mediation, I can share it with you.
I've all done our interest.
Let's start making sure Tim's here at these meetings.
He's on vacation this
Yeah, but I just think we're just learning stuff that you are living with that helps us. And it'd be good for our attorneys to start.
This is truly uncharted waters. No one knows what to do with it.
Yeah, I'll just say that's a theme of the last 2 legislative sessions. I can tell you that exists all over our organization and everything that we're doing. It's just, they pass stuff and it doesn't make sense.
Well, they don't even use legally defined terms. Who uses immediately? What does that mean? It means nothing. I mean, it means nothing. It actually means nothing.
You have a business.
Yeah, why didn't they say?
Do you guys know if they've been looking, like, city attorneys have been looking at any cases that would be good to try to appeal? I mean, it might be smart for that to happen sooner rather than later, or if they're all just kind of being let go at this point, because that's gonna need appellate court clarification. Like, you're right, the law's a disaster. So that, all these district court judges were ruling differently throughout the state, county, here, it's just gotta come together. So hopefully there's some good cases, or even a combination of cases that the city's attorney's office can start looking at. These would be the fact pattern that we want brought up to an appellate court for clarification.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just say honestly, I think our focus is on public safety legislation right now in terms of what we take and what we don't take forward.
Right. Well, City of Longmont could always look at what other municipalities are doing as well, and file a joiner. So it just might be a good idea to start thinking longer term on appellate documents.
Yeah.
I think probably both. Yeah. We might talk to Christy, our fair housing attorney, and Tim, and just see what they have to find on this. Christy would probably be the primary, and Tim would just pay attention for general counsel purposes.
So I have just a couple of questions. There are some typos in here, but on T, which is the article of the Colorado Constitution, I just need an understanding of this, where it says the contribution on behalf of the agent or on behalf of the immediate family members. So if you're part of the agent, none of your family members can contribute to a political candidate. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
What page are you on?
T2.
What section is it?
T1.
Yeah, T1. mean, to me, if that's the case, it sort of says anybody that's part of the family is really kind of tied. Their hands are tied on anything they can do, if that's why if I'm reading it right.
Because we're a housing authority and not a private landlord, any person who controls 10% or more of the shares or interest in the agent. Oh, and the agent's officers, directors.
Contribution director and director on behalf of the agent or on behalf of the immediate family members. So I mean, it's just, I don't understand.
I'll highlight that and ask him about that.
And then the other thing that I have a question about is on 4, which is in, and you guys know that I am concerned about this. When we start listing the non-discrimination things, it bothers me. There are a couple that are missing from here, but I'm just wondering if we need to say something like, not limited to, but these such as, but not limited to, or we follow federal and state guidelines as far as discrimination goes.
Where are you?
And on page 4.
So this, I agree with you. I feel like this definition should expand, and this, typically in everything we have, this definition carries forward because it's out of statute.
That's the seven protected
From
class.
the Federal Housing Authority, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Colorado has more.
Colorado has more.
Yeah, so
This
that's,
is like the minimum, but I agree that
it needs to be
feels like
just
it's
say, you know,
expanded in real life.
yeah. Because there are some that are, well, age for one is definitely missing, but there are some that, you know, I'm just kind of thinking,
Agents are a protected class.
Under, yes, it
Under
changes
this?
who you're talking to, but yes.
Fair housing.
Under
Fair housing, it's not.
but employment. So I don't know whether you need, you know, how you need to word that. I just think it's kind of interesting.
We will just double check that with fair housing law and make sure it's up to date.
And Tim needs to make sure that it's referencing state law as well,
Mm-hmm.
because Colorado is more restrictive in certain areas.
And then I'll just send you a note about titles.
I mean, you can if you want to, but I will do a
Well,
thorough
if
read.
you want it, then it's in, on the same page in E, I think, the third line down, the agent will exercise no supervision over any employee or official of the owner. I think is what it should be.
Yeah, we'll catch that.
Yeah. And then on 5, under that agent thing again, the very first line says controls 10%. I think it should be or more of the shares instead of more. I don't know.
So Harold, just so you know, this is based off of the existing PMP management agreement for the rest of the homes that are open space and water use. So we had to go through and tailor for LHAAB, but we will work on catching these.
Does it make more sense just to use our lease?
Well, this is not the lease, this is the management agreement.
Management agreement?
And we already went, this is our second template. The first one we used was what we used for LIHTC properties, and it was really challenging to fit to this. And so Tim recommended we use the PMP template.
Okay.
And so it's not the lease, we're talking about the management agreement on most of these items so far.
Well, the problem with PMPs is that most of this is, as we're catching, is outdated based on.
Right. Tim did a read through, but we're gonna double check with him.
Okay. And Arlene, back to your other question, the agent is the city. This is where it gets wonky. The agent is,
The agent is LHA.
well, right, the agent is the housing authority, who the board of directors is the city council members. And then you all are an advisory board, so it doesn't apply to you. I am technically the administrator of the agent, so most of these rules will only apply to me and the LHA board. And so the But there are different rules related to that, and so I would look to Boulder County, the Boulder County Commissioners, who sit in a similar role as the council, and I know they make political contributions, so we'll need to work that a little bit in a different way. It's not a big deal for me, my ethics prevent me from doing it anyway, but I think to everyone else, it shouldn't impact anyone.
Well, I think it reads that it's on behalf of the agent, so it would be any of those individuals doing it on behalf of LHA. They can do it on behalf of themselves, I believe.
Correct. And that's the nuance in the state law is, that's why a lot of times you'll see council members say, I'm doing this as an individual. They're driving that line in between it, so as long as anything's in play where you go, I'm doing this as an individual. It's different for me because my professional ethics just prevent me from doing it across the board, even as an individual, so.
And your family as well, this permit is
Just me.
just you, okay. I guess that's the part that I was kind of confused about.
I'll highlight it for Tim.
Okay. No other questions? We're gonna move right along. Metal detectors, I'm guessing that's Sarah? Yes, so, we had 2 additional devices sent. Harold and I became construction workers and put them in his office. Late July, one of them exploded. The batteries, the lithium batteries they sent us, exploded. They gave us the case was fireproof, or the civic center would have had problems.
My office in particular.
Yes.
The drywall's all melted.
Yeah.
No, it's just smoke damage.
Oh, good.
Yes.
So that happened, and they basically described it as, faulty battery, and they said that we could use the alkaline if we needed to. We did switch to an Energizer lithium battery, which we've not had any issue with. We've been monitoring every time it's taking a reading, it's between about 2 and 16, which is where we want to see the numbers, especially if you're not smoking meth or don't have meth on your clothing. We did have a meeting set up yesterday with New Zealand, but he didn't get the invitation, so we rescheduled it till next week.
What's the website, Sarah?
WizBlock. That's where we can monitor the readings and then see where the devices are. And is there an alarm that will go off that would tell you to get above that? No, so it is basically, it's silent and it's all through the website. So what's interesting is the proposal talked about how we would get, something, an alert of some kind, but we don't have that. And I'm not sure.
I think we said not to do it because we didn't want to get pinged.
Pinged all the time? Okay.
Yeah, at this point. So you can see, this is kind of what it shows. We can set the alerts at certain levels, and I think they said 60 is active smoking, and so you can go in and say, we'll set the alerts at this, but yeah, this is kind of what it looks like.
So how much time is that? Sorry.
So they say that it's set at certain time increments, but if you look at all the readings, it's all over the map. We wanted to go to 4 hours, and for some reason, we're at 60 minutes still. So ideally, he came back and said, and this is where the questions come in, is that if we set the frequency at 120 minutes, that these batteries should last 12 to 24 months, which I don't believe that, because we've been changing batteries about every week. So that is not obviously going to work. You can't be in people's residences that much, right? So
Are they making that assertion with their batteries or just batteries in general?
batteries in general.
Okay.
And I want to know from them, like, if this is so much like a fire alarm, why are you, maybe they are working on the technology to make it hardwired, but that would be the ultimate goal, right, to have it hardwired. So more questions for the company, and they did offer to send us a replacement, and we just decided we have two, we have the original and one of the newer ones. So, and the readings are consistent, so that's
Yeah.
positive.
That was our big question, is it consistent? Now we know it's consistent.
We're gonna have
So-
it in our lease, we're gonna have it in the lease, talks about not protecting and not damaging it and disconnecting it.
If we move forward with it, absolutely.
Yeah, and recall that the idea is we wouldn't put these in occupied units at this time. We would put them in certified clean units, so people are moving in, and they would be notified. This is tested, clean, and you have a meth detector. But there's challenges with putting it in occupied units.
What would prevent somebody from taking it outside, just living it on that patio?
It's actually drilled into the wall, so I mean, they
So the
absolutely
tamper
could,
was the
they're
same, and you would get.
It's got a device that, like literally every time we change the batteries, it triggers a tamper button.
Okay.
And that would be an alert that you would get, is if somebody's, I think it does alert.
They have a tilt alert as well, so even if you turn it,
Yeah.
it sets that.
Which makes sense, because otherwise, yeah, let's just take it off, put it outside for a while.
Right.
Yeah, you can see here where one of them actually triggered the tilt alert. And that could have been
That was a battery
change.
And this is just pilot right now, where there's two of them that are,
It's in my office.
and the other one, did you change out the batteries that came so that they're not the explosive ones?
Yeah. That was the other reason we wanted to go to Energizer or Duracell Lithium, because if their batteries fail, then at least you have a company that you can go to.
So Harold, when you showed us that reading, it looked like there was a spike, but can you describe for everybody what that actually is?
Well,
It's not meth in Harold's office.
Well, no, I mean, part of it is what we learned is these things are like crazy sensitive. And you can actually at sometimes see spikes when Sarah's in there changing batteries. And it may, I mean, basically what we're learning is we're all at some point getting contaminated with meth. And, you know, my office probably has embedded contamination in the carpet, because if I'm out going around in places where people are smoking meth, if it gets on my shoes or anything, I'm bringing it into the office and bringing it into the floor. So, you know, that's a piece of the puzzle. External air intakes, if somebody is smoking it outside the facility, it could trigger it. At one point we thought that may be something that we're seeing, because it was somewhat consistent, and it was at night. There were like certain times where we were like, this is interesting.
Well, it's definitely leveled out since we had that last meeting. They're like, you just need to leave them, because we had moved them a few times too fast, and they need to stabilize in one place.
And the one that wasn't working, that was old, they said clean it with industrial alcohol, which Sarah did. And once we did that, it zeroed out and started going.
So if we got down the road and we're using these things, and we get an alert on one of them, so we suspect there's meth in the apartment, are we then gonna bring in some kind of authoritative testing to validate before we take any action?
Yeah, we would have to, because these aren't regulatory. The industrial hygienist is regulatory. So if we had an idea that meth was in there, we would need to bring in recycle and conduct the test, and then that's actually what you can act upon. The intent is not to get caught in a rebuild or a reconstruction. It's to just be able to clean the units, which is significantly cheaper and going to be more important as we go forward, because as we thought, not sure we're going to get meth insurance.
We are no longer a moneymaker for insurance companies. We utilize our policy too much, so.
So with the variance, I guess let's just use the graph that you're showing everybody. Would there be any point on that with the variations you in your own office that you guys would envision we call a cleaning company in for? Do you have a numerical value, or do we yet where we say, yep, this is the time we go in? Because obviously, you know, you're not
60.
smoking meth in your office, so it's at 60.
The numbers
So
at
nothing
60.
here would trigger, for example, somebody.
Now, unless someone came in, I mean, maybe I just literally walked through a house that we recently condemned, I don't know,
Okay.
but I haven't done that yet. And I haven't been to home with the houses yet, so lately.
We should try that.
Well, apparently though, if you trigger it once and it's in there, you have to do something to let it air out again, or what? That's not the technical term.
Yeah.
Cycle itself out. So really the idea, the first idea with this is prevention. If someone cares enough about their housing to not smoke or use meth anyway in their unit, then this would hopefully deter. And then secondly, if you are gonna go ahead and do that, to catch it early so it's just a cleaning and not an ongoing problem as we go.
And we also brought the fire department in one day when it was doing some weird stuff, and they brought in their devices. And their devices didn't pick up any other chemicals that were in there that would trigger it. So that was an interesting data point for us. So we know there wasn't any cross contamination from other things. Because one of the things we know is bad air conditions can also create similar chemicals, especially these high efficiency ones. When they start failing, they start releasing chemicals into your environment. But they didn't pick anything up. So we were able to go, okay, what this is reading is not what they're reading now. More work to do.
So again, Harold and Sarah, would you say that we're in the fine tuning, but hopeful that this will be something that we can use? Where are you?
Yes, if we can figure this battery thing out.
Yeah.
That's not.
No, we're not doing that.
Well, and so understand things that we've learned. So what we've talked about is, I think the first time they sent one to us, it wasn't in a sealed container. And so it is highly likely that we know that people in the packaging industry and the shipping industry itself has people in the warehouses and other things use meth. So in that case, it could have been contaminated before we even plugged it in, because it was pulling it out of the box. And now they seal them in a vacuum sealed package, which obviously made some difference in this. The other thing we're trying to figure out is, when we look at the construction industry, we tend to see high levels of meth usage in the drywall and the painting industry. And so what does that look like in terms of the construction of your house? And, you know, are we gonna see levels? And we talked about, well, at what point during construction do we bring these in? And because you don't wanna get into a brand new facility, but hopefully it should be low enough that it's not above 60. So 60 is going to be that, if we do this, I think 60 or 70 is going to be that limit for active use.
So it sounds like we're still pretty early on though, as far as testing it. Is this, I'm sure you guys looked at a bunch of different companies and providers, but the technology is just so infant that it's.
This is the only
one in the world.
And they can't figure out how to ship things and
They are
exploding batteries.
newly expanding into, we are maybe the first or second in the US market, so they are just figuring out international business.
Yeah, most of it's in New Zealand and Australia, so they're not, they're not encountering the same issues in terms of how they're getting things there and the number of different facilities it's moving. It's.
How big is this company?
Do what?
How big is this company?
They're expanding fast. I couldn't tell you today what it is. So they just opened I think they said a U.S. division, which is Dan, the guy we're dealing with. I think they have a European division. So they're expanding fast, especially in the hotel industry.
Like the city of Boulder was in the news several months ago about all their libraries having to get shut down. What are they just going in with a different testing device on a regular? You know,
No, it's all the same standard device.
but it's the
When
same
they
company
test
that they're using.
It's a swabs.
Yeah, they have to use an industrial hygienist to do any testing
Okay.
like that. Like what we've done to kind of be semi-proactive is purchase them. You can buy them on Amazon, that's what we've done, to determine, wow, is this something that we need to worry about or not?
Yeah.
And those tests are accurate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So those are just it's just a
Yeah, you
plus
swallow
minus
before-
basically.
Yeah, it's like almost a COVID test type.
Yeah, so that's the testing side, which we do have a lot more resources now than we did, 5 years ago. The detector, though, for active use, this is the only one there is.
Yeah, so we took the same, we know now from the swabs that Lisa gets off of Amazon, we've now correlated those to the industrial hygienist, so we know when we see a line that it's there. We actually went into our library and used those, and nothing came back to a level where we would see it. Boulder's issue and Inglewood's issue was really related to, I think Boulder is they had a campsite right outside of the building where the air intake was, and so it was pulling it in active on a regular basis, and Inglewood had the same issue. So, yeah, this is just to catch it early so we can go in and clean it. And again, not from this has nothing to do with the criminal side of it. This is all civil and trying to ensure that we can keep the costs from blowing up on us.
So then one follow-up thing is you mentioned the construction crews coming in, hanging drywall and painting and things like that. Do you build that into your contracts, like for Village Place with the general contractor, that they have to do some testing at a certain point?
This is all brand new world.
This just hit us.
Yeah. So, not yet.
Smoking meth.
Yeah.
Anti-smoking.
Yeah.
Well, the hard part is in construction. The hard part in construction is that we do know the things like acetone. There are some chemicals in construction that will trigger it.
Yeah.
Because we thought about, well, do we get some of these and put it in during construction so that we can see what's going on? There is an overlap in some of the chemicals that are in construction. I think what it's telling us is during construction we need to have active follow-up and people moving through the buildings. Probably less important in like a Village Place because we're going to be actively in there while they're doing the construction. More important when we think of home.
New
New builds when they're on their own.
Can we get a list of the next time you talk to the company, the New Zealand company, like a list of chemicals that maybe they've run into or that they know, like acetone?
They have it.
Okay, so we already have that. Is it just, I don't know, is it just like a couple things just in the construction phase? Or is it like a, page long list?
I will track that down for you.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't know off the top of my head.
and it may not be acetone, it's varnish.
Varnish
was-
is,
Anything with a varnish is the one, and that just gives you a sense of what's in that.
Right.
That's the xylazine, or,
Well,
it will not pick up xylazine
Yeah.
or fentanyl.
yeah.
When are you gonna know about the insurance? Are they, is this like
I think we're still looking.
No,
No,
It's-
you can't answer that.
they are removing our byproduct insurance, so we will no longer have that coverage. They're upping their deductibles, they're, changing their wind and hail, percentages. Some of our policies might have had a 1%, the standard usually is 2%, so I don't know if bringing those up to 2% for a lot of those, but we're still waiting to hear back. So there's not very many insurance companies that actually do housing authorities. So currently right now, the insurance company we're with also decided they didn't want to talk to our broker. So I'm the middleman, they send the stuff to me, I send it to her. They finally started somewhat communicating, because I think they're kind of realizing that they're getting hit from all areas. So we're still analyzing most of our insurance, most of our policies of risk management, because we had such a high loss factor. I think they told me this week's was 217%. So that has increased dramatically insurance-wise.
So there's some grants out there through the EPA and the state for meth cleanup that I've been looking into. So we'll probably apply for those grants. I think the state one is up to $250,000 a year. And then of course the EPA has theirs. So if we can tap into those resources, that would be nice.
So Kendra, I have a question for you and for the group. Most places, like when we asked this, so Zinnia, LHA won't own Zinnia, so it won't be under our insurance policy, the building. And I asked that team, what do you do for meth insurance? And they're like, well, we have pollution insurance. And that is what most places rely on for meth, but I have not heard that they've actually successfully utilized it for meth. Have you heard anything about utilizing pollution policy on meth?
Our agent, our broker, was going to look into pollution policies, but it's very possible that even those policies are coming to the point where, and maybe they haven't been utilized.
But this is, so when we manage, third-party manage other properties, so Atwood, Zinnia, they won't be covered by the same housing authority insurance policies, and so they won't have specific meth coverage either. But it's not our financial liability, but that is an interesting thing that not everyone is as proactive as we are about testing and cleanup, and so that's something we're gonna make sure we work with the Zinnia team to make sure we're utilizing the meth detectors if that's an option. And
well, part of it is, I know that when I've talked to a couple of private owners, they've tried to utilize the pollution component of their insurance, and they were denied. That guy that was coming to the council is one of those. The insurance company was denying it because meth isn't.
So I think a lot of housing providers out there think that this pollution coverage will work, but they haven't been proactive or utilized it and found out that it won't work. So that's just something interesting in the industry that we will, as third-party property owners, want to make sure we.
Now, some of it's due to be changed. So Boulder County Public Health, all the public health agencies are working with Colorado Department of Health and understanding what the levels are. The good example that Lisa gave at Village Place after we met with them is the levels are basically designed for children in homes where if you literally lick the wall or the windowsill, that's what triggers the issue. They're not necessarily designed for age-restricted units, commercial areas, and in terms of the levels and what that really means. So, like Boulder County, or Boulder Library, that was an interesting one because it met the definition, but the likelihood of a health impact to the patrons of the library, it was actually really low because you're not constantly in contact with it, you're not ingesting it, because you look at a windowsill or something. And so the state is working to adjust the meth levels in terms of what will trigger remediation and what won't trigger remediation.
Can you just briefly, because this question has come up for several different facilities, give us an update on security cameras in the parking lots?
Sure. We went to a bid process. Tracy and I have been working on this together. Thank you. It sounds like some of the bids that came back came in like one was over $400,000. So that was because they included all of LHA properties, not the ones that have the CDBG grant. So we've done the math and it's coming into, it looks much better. And I'll let Tracy.
It's down to around 80,000 in order to do the properties. We have a CDBG grant, 61. So there's some different funding that we need to.
We might have some more CDBG coming in that we might have been.
So I think it was the company that does the police department's cameras.
All of our NOAA cameras that are up in the city with downtown, with our parks, has worked like hand in hand with our Next Light folks and the director.
But because it
So there's a change that just happened last week.
Okay.
I
think Valerie has been invited to a meeting. Maybe that's an update.
Yeah, so we're shifting, and as we were trying to figure out as part of the city's budget financially how we do cameras, we shifted over to utilizing ARPA funds in the neighborhood portal and some other things. So what we realized in that is, so we brought Valerie Scott in from purchasing, and we started running through what has been procured to meet federal standards. So we know Valtech has, we know that the LTE component has been procured to hit federal standards. The next piece that we got into is, are you looking at Genetec cameras?
I'm not specifically, but that might be what Valerie's talking to us about.
So part of it is the Genetec cameras are what we're looking at. We then went out to the co-ops to find whether or not there were co-ops that were procured to meet federal standards, and they found a few, so they're looking through those co-ops now. That'll both have the playback function and the cameras, and so it may mean if we do that and we can find a co-op that we can go off of, we may pivot pretty fast, but.
Pivot away from Valtech?
Well, no, they'll still be
It's the type of
involved, but the piece is, I think I would look to make sure that we're getting quotes on Genetec cameras.
Okay.
And
do you know if Ron is, I'm sure Ron's been.
Genetec is what Ron's been talking
Right.
about with them, so I'm pretty sure that that's what's in there.
Yeah.
So,
Actually.
A problem with, using CDBG funds is you can't bid a specific camera. You can say like or equal to.
yeah, so these federally procured have a list of cameras, of which one of them is Genetec.
So what facilities right now still do not have these security cameras? So Spring Creek and Fall River have nothing outside,
Hartstone Lodge,
have nothing outside. And
neighborhood has nothing.
right, except, well, this building does, so the only buildings that have outside is this building and the suites.
Not those, not outside.
Not outside.
They're outside. But there are some, the Village Place that we put with Noah that are in the area, which is a little bit different.
Yeah, which we can capture, the community area out front, the alley right there. So that's a bit, I mean, it's doing its job for now for that spot. So basically a large majority can
Right.
not have it. Yeah.
Okay. So the CDBG funds would be used for the neighborhood, Hartstone Lodge, Spring Creek, Fall River, and the suites. And then Village Place, we'll get those in with the re-syndication. This property already has them, but we'll work to tweak that over time to make sure it's compatible with everything else. So we will have cameras at all these properties once the CDBG funds are in, and then a couple of them we just need to tweak over time to make sure that they fit with the system. So we are pretty I mean, I feel like we just have to do an action plan amendment on the CDBG funds to get more funding in, because we have some freeing up.
And some procurement issues.
And we gotta have to work through it. So we're working through it. The goal is still have it done by October.
The other thing that's creeping into this world is this really hit like Friday of last week, is that the city's key system is not, it hasn't really been working anyway. That's why we couldn't, as we were bringing these buildings on, we couldn't bring them into that system. We're starting to have more and more issues. So Sandy and I have been talking about the need to replace the access system. If we get the right camera in the replacement of the access systems, may allow us to migrate these facilities, because there are companies that integrate the access system with the cameras, so that when people are accessing facilities, it's communicating to the cameras that says somebody's coming in, and the camera captures it. So in places where we have issues with people bringing in individuals that aren't supposed to be in the property, that may help us start getting control of it. And so that's the advantage of this cooperative that we just found. So like one of them that was bid out of Texas actually is ADT, who integrates the cameras, playback system, and the access control system, which is where we want to be eventually. And that's where managing the types of cameras we get in, even if we can't do access now, is important, because you want them to be able to integrate. So there's a point where we know we need to get it done, but as we're learning through all of these issues, we also want to get it done right, so that we have the best system in play over time for all of our facilities, and where they integrate with each other. So like, for example, when we had the issue in the neighborhood, their cameras integrate with these cameras, but then also can integrate with cameras that we have at Rough and Ready Park and at Lanyon Park to kind of try to triangulate really quick on issues. Because we're finding the ROI has been proven out for us, which is why we're pushing this money into it. So we're gonna push about 300,000 of ARPA funds. There's about 180,000 in public safety funds. So we're pretty close to allocating $500,000, subject to council approval. But I can tell you in 3 cases, we've probably already exceeded that in terms of an ROI when you factor in time that it's taken public safety to deal with issues. I can think of 2 shootings, more than 3 cases. The postal murder, they're getting clarity within 24 hours of what's going on, versus before when we look at the Rita case, when you start factoring in the time cost of the positions, the ROI, you make it up immediately. So the business case is there, we just need to make sure we do it right.
Okay, any other questions? So I guess my question is this, because I'm looking at the time and I don't want to have us run over. Are we going to do the lease agreement and all that other kind of stuff today? Is that critical for us to look at today? I know that there are going to be questions on it. And then as compared to trying to finish out with everything that's here. I just don't want to run us beyond 11 if at all possible. So what is the deal with this?
So we're still finalizing it by Friday to take to the board on Tuesday.
So you need input today?
Yes, or you could email it as well. Whichever.
Well, I think then maybe we'll just try going through it today, and we'll just have to move fast.
So this lease agreement is, Tracy or Lisa, can you let me know what the background, where did we pull this lease agreement from?
This is the LHA lease.
This is the master LHA lease that we've been using on every property.
Right, it's new lease.
But we tweaked it to be appropriate for a single family home.
Correct.
Okay, so we put in yard work and utility information and
parking,
parking,
whatever is different from a single family.
So everything on this lease has already been reviewed by legal, approved by the board. So the only modifications we made were things that are related to single family home.
So that's the current lease that's being used.
For every LHA property.
So this was last updated
Material.
last year.
I'm sorry?
That takes ID or what you're looking for.
From earlier in the meeting?
Yeah.
Yes, I got those.
Okay.
So are there questions on this? I have a few, but.
I don't understand section 4, like the point of it, the concessions part. If that's not gonna be an issue, why it's included, or maybe even just why that first sentence is included.
Where are you?
Oh, sorry, section 4, and it's at page 12 of our packet.
It's a standard lease type of thing, because say you're having a difficulty renting 20, say Village Place, we go through this renovation and we just can't rent all those units, and we offer a concession. It could be a one-time concession, like they get half a month free or a full month free, or they get $100 less a month. You want it to be documented, because if they don't fulfill that lease, you need to go and collect that back.
So then what's the point of the one-time concession here being $0?
It's just so that verbiage is in there, because we use the same lease over and over.
This would be
Okay, so that'll be, okay.
Yeah, this would be like a blank,
Yeah, okay.
and A would be put there.
Yeah, I think Arlene's the only one here that saw the lease when we started this issue. We were seeing differences. And so we just kept one lease for all properties, which means it may have 0 just because.
Okay, yeah, I just thought that was intentional, because the other place were just okay.
Glenn, did you have some questions?
I already.
You sent it to
For a
us?
single year-old.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe I'll just.
Mine are mostly just as, you know, a lot of them were typos, but the main one was the lease agreement, or the clause on the, not being able to, take money and apply it and all kinds of things.
Oh,
Yeah, section 3, and I have that notated.
Yeah.
okay, so I have a couple of things. I know that, starting with section 3 rent, I know that this came up in our meetings, and I'm just wondering if this is ever going to be a possibility to be able to do a direct deposit. So that, I think that would solve a lot of the problems, if they can do that.
So I am working that into the budget next year.
Okay.
I've already got a quote. And the biggest piece of it, I mean, it's very possible with, and what I wanna do is I wanna look at what we have remaining on these properties, if there's budget available, to maybe add it today. Our renewal is October 1st, so it would be a 3-month period where we would have to add it. It's gonna be the best time to implement it before the new year, because then accounting is stopped for 6 months before we can do any type of, we're working on financials. But it is doable, but there's, the biggest piece of it is the implementation, which is about $14,000. They will be transferring our current system to a new system to be able to do this, but it would provide direct deposit capability through what we call Rent Cafe, which is what our housing choice vouchers use right now, just the landlords to get their payments now. It would provide being able to create a maintenance request online, so a work order, so they're not having to go to the community manager, telling them, and then the community manager has it entered in the system. They'll have that capability. They'll have capability to look at their ledger, you know, so it's all kind of online access, and we are researching it right now.
Great, because I know that has come up, and that.
What
Okay.
about the,
What's that?
what about, Venmo and some of these online payment again?
I'll have to ask and see if those are available. It would actually be through the portal in Rent Cafe, so you would set up your account. You could set it up to do it automatically. You could set it up to have you go in every month, similar to like you pay a credit card or anything like that. It would be going to the portal. My guess is it doesn't allow, and we wouldn't do any justice if it did allow credit cards. So it would be usually a debit card or a checking account that's required in most of these cases, but we're still working out those specifics.
Okay. Under section 10, under vehicles, where we're talking about towing, I know that it says that the resident is responsible for the expense of the towing. The next sentence, so confuses me a little bit, where it says the resident shall not reimburse the landlord for the cost of all towing. So we're not getting hit twice there, are we? I mean, the resident just pays for the towed vehicle?
Depending, so sometimes we have, like, if we have to have a vehicle moved, because like say we gave proper notice you need to move your vehicle, and they don't move it,
Then you'll do it.
and like we have to have it relocated on site, we can call and have them relocate it, and then go back to the resident for that.
Okay, all right. Under animals, and I know that it says 25 pounds, any cat larger than 25 pounds. I guess what I'm concerned about is it doesn't specify particular animals, and I'm fine with that. Other than, are there animals we wouldn't allow in there?
Well, currently, all LHA properties, except for the Hartson Little Lodge, do not allow pets. They're service animals or emotional support animals, and those have different legalities that we have to follow when approving them. But they cannot be considered a pet.
So those don't fall within this animal?
Correct.
So why, since we don't allow animals, should we just?
Well, because the Suites does. And Hartson Little Lodge all allow pets.
Well, this is kind of in the property too, so I guess the determination is, are we going to allow pets at the Adrian House?
Because this is specific for the Adrian House, correct?
Mm.
And those city properties, it's a four-bedroom family home, are you gonna allow that?
Don't look at me, I'm not the landlord. I don't make those
I mean,
decisions.
you may have families that already have that, so I mean, I guess, I don't know what, it's kind of a different, it's a different unit all on its own. So A&M doesn't allow that? Just sort of sounds.
So this lease agreement is actually used for LHA properties, is that right? Okay, all right.
So you allow emotional support animals, isn't that, I mean, not a real thing though? I mean, under.
Service animals,
Service animals,
And
not
emotional
emotional support.
With proper documentation, we have to allow emotional support animals.
Okay,
Yeah, that's included now in the definition of service animal.
in Colorado.
But it's for support in their home, not
Yeah, yeah,
outside
yeah.
of their home.
Okay.
All right. I guess one of the things under section 22, which is responsibility for damage, my concern where it says landlord's not liable to resident or invitee for any injury, damage, etc. So what happens if somebody falls on the property? They're not.
Unless caused by the landlords after admission. So if they fall on their own, that's on them. Yeah, we're not
Okay.
responsible.
Okay, so if they fall on the messy sidewalk, it's LHA's concern, correct?
Only, we have to be made aware of the issue for us to be liable for what occurs. And so, if the best example was Village Place where the ice was constantly accumulating during storms at the one location. Once we're made aware of it, we have to make sure that we are managing it so that it's not an issue. If we're not made aware of it and they fall, then that is their liability. That's just generally, I think that's part of the whole, how we look at governmental immunity and those issues. It's not unlike a manhole cover. If we see a manhole cover, if I see one driving down the road, I have to call it in because we're aware of it. If we're not aware of it and a car drives through it, then that's a different issue. So that's kind of what this language is really trying to get at is if you do something and it causes you to have injury, that's on you.
I wonder if you need to put that in there and say, after, that's just my thing. You know, after being made aware of or something like that. It's just kind of strange. Under 26, re-entry and keys. At one point, you guys brought into one of our meetings those door entry things that was going to maintenance, that maintenance would put on the door that said, hey, we're in your building or in your room. Are we still using those?
Yes, and they were just resupplied last week with all the maintenance guys. Last Tuesday, the maintenance guys took new supplies for those who had none. So, yeah, we're.
Under section 42, I didn't see where number B, BAWA was attached. I'm guessing it's violence against women.
Yeah.
And that will probably go away. They won't be required to use the VAWA under this program because there's no like that. They will if it's a voucher. Under the voucher program, we have to give them the VAWA. But under the city's property, we wouldn't be required to. And that's something that we could.
Property but basement.
Yes.
And you have to do it for radon discussion. You have to do it in
Good to know.
Have we tested out for radon?
lead too, you need a lead.
Let me check with, I think so, because CBD has lead requirements with it. So let me just double check with Adam, who's managing the rehab, and make sure we have.
So we did a lead test, and it's asbestos test.
You still have to do it in
Yeah,
you still have to do it in the release that says you don't have
Right.
Do you need a lead aluminum and you need a radon for a single family?
Have we tested radon?
I'm gonna double check that.
So, okay, well, I'm gonna just jump into the house rules. There are just a couple of things. One, I think number 11 and number 26 say the same thing, and it could be combined into one. And then 26 say the same thing, and it could be kind of combined into one. And it looks to me like the house rules and regulations have taken everything from the lease. The thing that I don't see in the lease that I think is critical, because this comes up just about every time you go to some of the facilities, and that's the non-smoking. You guys have put it down here as number 44. I think it really needs to be in the lease as well.
Well, the good one is part of the lease, it's just,
And we have them actually initial this to state that they are acknowledging that it is.
True, but everything else is sort of coming from the lease line. It's such a critical thing, that's what we hear all the time, is people are smoking. They're not 25 feet, or they're in their room or something. I don't know how many people even really go through with it, word for word.
I'm gonna say when we got into this, we did that as an addendum because we wanted to call their attention to it and have them specifically sign that piece of it, which is why we did it as an addendum versus it just being caught within the master lease itself.
That's really all that I have.
Is that why we did that, Lisa?
is there initially by that specifically?
Yeah, the
Right.
one.
And then it didn't this part, it is the lease, doesn't matter what you put it.
So, Arlene, most of your comments, these are on the master form lease and master, these are the house rules we have for every unit. So I feel like these updates, we should make the next time we do a master update. But
Well,
for
we
this
might-
one,
We might have to do some updatings because of state law.
The law changes, so I'm
so
gonna,
let's note those with the master. I might not include those for this one specifically until we update the, well, let me think about that. I don't wanna outrun this one property's one lease ahead of the entire master. But
We can do an addendum to the, we don't have to change the lease, we can do an addendum to the lease.
with the legislation, with the new.
Okay.
Okay, some check boxes for income
Okay.
supports.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions, comments? Wonderful. All right, let's go on to LHA report. Update on our operations. And I think everything is included.
So updated occupancy report, for those who were actively leasing during the month, we hit 96% occupied, which is a high for us over the last 2.5 years. I just noted that there is one typo. Spring Creek does have one vacant down on the current statuses. And that one is pending transfer. We have opened it up to 3 different residents to transfer to that one. But going through these, Aspen Meadows neighborhood, we're currently sitting at 5 vacancies. 3 are down for Quebec. 1 is sitting a year down, and that's the one that we didn't have insurance money on, but we just got the bid, sent it into investors yesterday for the ductwork and the drywall, so that if we can get that done, then we can start piecing it together in-house to get that renovated. The 2 other meth units are currently being cleaned.
so that one is who we're partnering with Habitats.
Yes.
Provide, yeah, the person that does a lot of the contract work for Habitat is helping us with that one.
Okay. Does list that down on the bottom. Okay.
Sorry, please go ahead.
You're fine. The 2 other one is a PVB unit that we were going to do a transfer into, but now we're opening that up, and Ruby is waiting for the wait list for the 3 and 4 bedroom PVB units to open up because we haven't extinguished that list. So hopefully we'll have that one rented by the end of next month. And the other one just vacated, so we're turning that one. Seniors, we have 3 vacancies here. One's already been rented. I think actually a second one was rented this week already. Fall River, we're down to 3 vacants. The 1 meth unit that's been down a little over a year and a half. that's rented. We just took possession of that Friday. So that one's done, and the other two are new vacancies that we're working through the wait list on. Hearthstone has no vacancies. The Lodge has one, and she has an application pending on that. The Suites, we currently only have 4 vacants. 2 are LHA, 2 are MHP, but 3 of those are down. 2 are down for meth, 1 is down for a flood, and the other vacancy, which is an MHP unit, is possibly a reasonable accommodation transfer. So moving through those pretty quickly. Spring Creek has the one, like I notated. Briarwood currently has 3 vacants, 2 of them are meth, and the other one is rented, I think, and we've had the inspection. Tracy, do you know? Briarwood, okay. I believe it's been inspected, and we should be having a move in next week on that one. In Village Place, we have our 5 vacants that we're holding for the renovation, so. Our meth contamination list has grown a little bit, but we will be next month taking off, I believe, 3 or 4 of these units that have been completely renovated and will be turned back over to us for occupancy, so. Any questions on the occupancy? Move on.
When are those due to come on?
Well, 108 we signed on Friday, 127 over, 7127, the flood unit. We should be signing off on, I think, today or tomorrow. Another one, 7323, I believe was just the cleaning, and that one, we're just waiting for the final test result from the official test result. We've been told it's cleared, and there's no reconstruction of that unit. So it'd just be going in and just doing the minor maintenance on it. That one should be, as soon as we get the test results this week, released back to us.
Sarah, we may want to order 3 units and start a test.
108, that one's ready and it's leased. I think we have an inspection on that one. We could get a unit in that one.
Maybe too late, have they already signed the lease?
No, not yet.
We have to do an addendum, something,
Yeah.
develop something for them to sign.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just thinking it's a good opportunity to test a clean unit.
How soon will they sign?
On to ask Gregory where he's at with that, because that's a PPV unit, so.
We can work on that, yeah.
If we don't get, if we don't get 1, maybe we get 2 extend the test.
Because I know we have a couple of the suites coming, so.
In the worst case, we could use one that we have.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Woohoo! Exciting.
I'll take it. Okay, so for general property updates, we have started intaking donations over at the suites for one of the conference rooms, and this is kind of what we're hoping with it. If we have that foundation arm too, that we can get more. We've had unfortunately, residents pass away, the families don't want to do anything with their stuff, so they just sign it over to LHA. LHA staff is going through it. Any food that's good, canned goods that have not been opened, we're donating to that on-site pantry. But furnishings, stuff like that, that are in great condition, that we don't want to just throw in the trash. We're inspecting, making sure no bugs, everything. If it's all in great shape, we're moving it over to the suites, and we started a donation center where we've actually had 3 residents been able to benefit from it already. We had 1 resident who previously homeless. His brother got him a bed and stuff, but he had nothing for the living room, so we were able to give him a dining table, chairs, and some other little seating, so he had that. We had a fire victim from another who moved from out of state in with family, so didn't have anything. We were able to give her some dishes, furnishings, and everything else for her house. So we started that. Our building attendants are building shelving right now to put in there so that we can get it all up on shelves. Village Place, we have all the dishes that we were gonna just throw out because it used to be a full-service kitchen in there before LHA took over, and the dishes still remain. So our building attendants are putting them into groups of 3s and 6s. So a household, when they move in the suites, but if they have nothing, can at least have a day's worth of dishes ready for them. So we're kind of excited about that. In the end of the month, 2 staff members, we're gonna attend a permanent supportive housing conference up in Fort Collins that CHAC is putting on for those who are dealing with households that are moving from homelessness into that supportive housing and how to handle it. It's their first big networking. They've been wanting to get this put together, so two of us will be attending that. We have joined the Metro General Apartment Association. We moved from the Boulder one over to North Metro just because of the training opportunities. Our maintenance team is attending an HVAC and EPA training September 4th. We were able to get the maintenance, the cost of this class is only about $1,500. They're offering to it as just over $300 per guy. So, and they'll leave with their, it's a 2-day class with their certifications for HVAC and refrigerants. The suites, Chaffa did an inspection of 20% of the units and the entire building, all closets, working systems. No urgent findings. Typically an urgent finding is smoke detectors down, not working, emergency lights, egress issues. Nothing like that was found, and everything else was very minimal. They stated that the building looked like it's been being cared for and maintained, and it showed, so we were really happy with that. And then both the manager and assistant manager have given notice. The assistant manager's last day was Friday. Our manager's last day is Tuesday. So with those vacancies at the suites, Tracy's gonna help fill. I have a manager who's gonna help fill. Sarah's gonna pop in there. Harold's volunteered to pop in there, so it's gonna be a joint to help fill that while we hire. Same with the manager and the assistant also covered Aspen seniors and neighborhood. I will take over management duties of this here in the neighborhood. And then we have the adjuster out here. If you see all the tape on the floor, we have the faulty flooring from the remodel. The adjuster did come out and walk. We're waiting for his report with the insurance because sticky, messy situation, but we're working through it.
Yeah, I spoke with Palace last week, just getting updates. They're still interested in working with us once the insurance information comes through. So just keeping tabs on waiting for the adjusters.
Is the insurance gonna subrogate?
Yeah.
So they're gonna go back to Palace and Architect?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So Palace knows. The architect, we haven't updated the architect in a while because that one's more sensitive. Palace is very much open and wants to know as we go along. But I'm gonna have to call that architect once we know what it really is looking like. Yeah, so we have a good picture.
Yeah. So I'm waiting for that report. So I'll follow up this week. As the neighborhood, we also have a Chaffa file audit scheduled for next week. We're feeling really confident about that. We've done a pre-audit of all the files already, so we will get that done, and next month I'll report on any findings or how that went. The 615 Main, we already discussed this pending sale. Briarwood has 2 units down for the meth contamination that have been cleaned and just pending now testing. Let's see. So the place we discussed that meth unit, and the assigned parking has been discontinued with the exception of reasonable accommodations. So we've had about 6 residents put in reasonable accommodations for closer parking, but not really an issue that we thought we were going to have. So they're all doing that pretty well. Spring Creek, the Eagle Scout Boy Scouts project, we did all the final purchases on Sunday, and they started looking at some network that they have to do in the evenings this week to do the building of the raised garden beds over the old horseshoe pits. Chapel gave us the okay to change those because the horseshoe pits have not been utilized since the building was built. And so the Eagle Scout for his project is going to make those into raised garden beds. And so that work will be done this Saturday. And then we have a Chapel audit scheduled for the end of August for that property. And then Fall River, Home Depot is donating $500 worth of plants, shrubs, and trees for the residents to do a joint cleanup and renovation project at the property. Let's see. They also have a Chapel audit at the end of the month. Nothing new going on at the Hearthstone. The lodge had a REAC inspection and everything went well, no major findings. And then third party property, Xenia, utility work is almost completed. And then public safety has been very helpful in just helping with the management of the concerns of the residents, issues even with construction. It's kind of a big joint effort, just keeping everything contained and controlled there. And then our current open positions, we have the assistant manager for, we've changed that from the Aspens and Suites. It's gonna be now Aspens and Village Place, and the Suites, we're gonna hire the manager for just that location instead of them having 3. It'll be the Suites, and then when Xenia opens, they will take on that property. And then we will have a resource specialist or something for this properties opening. We're just reassessing those positions and fundings. So. Questions on the properties side?
As for, I'll leave it, I might take. Better get some of the properties up.
Okay, AR. So first, I apologize for the portrait. You should have got it landscape, so it's not so tiny. But council at our LHAAB meeting last time, we wrote off $324,000 that went to collections, and then another almost $8,000 that didn't go to collections, and most of that was driven because the individuals were deceased. There's no further action that can be played on those ones. So, and we have going to council this Tuesday another $100,000 that's going to be written off. A lot of these are, it probably accounts to about 5 major properties that had meth, and the cost to rehab those that gets pushed down to them. There is, like Lisa said, and even like the collection agency said, it's really hard to even get something on their credit report if it's fee related. If it's rent related, we can, but if it's fee related, it's a whole other ballgame. Credit agencies won't even take it. So it's now with, and the reason we write them off is because technically the community managers shouldn't also do any of the collections once it's been sent. So we let them know who we've sent. We write it on their ledger and we write it off so that they have that visualization as well. So they're not taking money. Does anybody have any questions on the AR? So to give you a little kind of background, since there's some new board members, or advisory board, is that every quarter we come and do kind of a quarterly update of our financials. On a monthly basis, what happens is we send a full detailed listing of what's happened and what's transacted on these properties to the investors, to the community managers, to the regional property manager, and now to our compliance. So they get a listing of here's what the budget is, here's where we're over, so that they can also monitor their budgets from that perspective, along with Heather does her analysis of where the AR stands, and where everything's like, is it a true credit? Do we need to look at the ledger? Do we have issues? Did Brett post incorrectly? So they have all this visibility, the property managers do, to maintain their budgets as well as collect on the AR. At a higher level, what you'll see is I kind of outline, it's mid-year, are we over 50% of our budget? Are we over? And if we start to see that, sometimes we look at the budget itself to see if we have it aligned properly. So like if we're doing payments on a quarterly basis and we're adjusting that based on monthly, that's where we can see issues and fluctuations. So for Fall River, you'll see on most of these properties where we're already over in our vacancies, dollars that have been budgeted, those are items highlighted in blue. In red is additional funding that's come in based on insurance proceeds. And what you won't necessarily see on the expense side is that we also track the insurance repairs that are happening, which will inflate our costs and maintenance expenses. So in Fall River, that it's showing that it's at 94% of the budget already, but 83K of that is insurance expenses. And then there's a couple other things that have gone over, and they're not over annually, but they're over in the period. So those are the main items for the financial purposes. On LHA, the reason LHA and LHCC are over are due to some new costs that
weren't kind of expected. It's kind of transitional, like HOA fees. HOA fees have transitioned from LHDC to LHA to pay for the over property until it closes. And then we've had some closing costs when we sold the Suites land and stuff like that. So, do you have any questions financially?
So part of what we know from a financial capacity perspective is we're getting a new snowplow truck changed over to the housing authority, ordering the sanders and other things, which once we get into the fall, actually will reduce what we have been paying during typical snowstorms. And then as we move into the next year, there's going to be a fairly significant savings to all the properties based on how we structure the cost. But if it doesn't snow, we would have saved the money anyway. But if it snows, we're actually gonna save money based on what we're paying the contractors. And the reality is we're having to go out anyway after they do the work. So I saw that email from Cash, that's moving, correct?
I emailed and said, invoice us.
Yeah.
I haven't seen anything yet.
Yeah, so they're doing it. So hopefully by this fall we'll have one truck. We plan on having two. We'll have a truck and then a Kubota style piece of equipment. We're hoping to have two. We can't get our trucks in.
You don't have any contingency for like breakdowns or anything? You have one truck, so what happens when the truck goes out?
We'll on the city, but these trucks actually with fleet, in most cases, if there's an issue, we will take it into our fleet services and they can turn those around pretty fast. During a snow event, anything snow related gets priority, so, and if it's a flat tire or something, we can go out and do it in the field. So we're not really worried about that. We do that on an ongoing basis, even with our big trucks, so.
So LHA hasn't had its own truck for several
Yeah.
years at this point. It's been using city vehicles when needed.
But we'll have a backup over here. We were hoping to have two. I think it was Ford that canceled an order of 30 that is creating an issue in the transition. So we'll see. We may have two by the time it comes around, but we're just waiting on the new ones to come in.
So the next we'll talk about are vouchers. I used to just give you here's what our vouchers count, but I kind of wanted to give you some idea how the 2-year tool works. So this is something we have to fill out for HUD every quarter to let them know that we're not gonna overspend our money and how we determined exactly what we're gonna get to. In this last quarter, we did see a significant change. I will tell you that the majority of that change that caused that was the Suites vouchers that went up to fair market, or to the approved amount that we got from DOH. I mean, that technically was almost $100,000 just to our vouchers, probably another $100,000 to MHP vouchers, because they were so far behind, that to get them up to that fair market rent, I mean, we're still not even there. When DOH gave us the approval, LHA did the exact same. We've got a new approval for the next year, and we're gonna have to see how that fluctuates. But what we're also seeing is the increase to the 105%. Right now, you can see we're looking at about 423 vouchers where we have 14 sitting and issued, and they're currently looking. But we're gonna have to start dropping the voucher count down. So I've already gave HCD, you need to, the next 5, you can't voucher up. And we're gonna have to start seeing this. By the end of 2024, we're expected to be at 410 vouchers. Because if you're already vouchered up, if you increase the fair market rent, you're gonna have to start vouchering down as those landlords start recertifying. So that's why when they brought up 110%, we were gonna have to extremely drop our vouchers down if we went to 110%, like Boulder County has.
So is this gonna cause us a problem if we're taking back any vouchers?
They're not gonna take back vouchers. I mean, we're vouchered up. That's what they want to see. I have posed to HUD. I said, okay, here's the situation. We're trying to keep up. We have 105% that we're trying to match Boulder, and Boulder's now at 210. We can't do that, as you can see through our two-year tool, through our HUD, and what signifies the formula? Like, how do we get additional funding? Because we have capacity, and probably homeowners here in Longmont that could use vouchers. I haven't heard back from her, but basically we'll be down to 410 vouchers by next year. And this is just what it looks like today. So you get what your actuals are, and then where you see this estimated attrition rate, HUD determines that based on what we send to HIT for, people that have been added and people that have lost their voucher. So we're currently at a 10% attrition rate, which says that every month we lose about 3.5 vouchers. So technically, you lose 3.5, you want to add 3.5, so you stay vouchered up. But we're going to have to start reducing. So that's kind of what that does. And then we have other planned additions and new leasing. New leasing is like those extra 14 that we say are already in play. And then our other planned additions and reductions kind of say at what month can we add and what month can we not, so that we end up being at the 6.2 million, and that includes our reserves, so that we don't bankrupt our voucher. And that they kind of in the two-year tool say you have 6.2 this year, you have 6.2 next year, and then the following year you get an increase. But I do think every year they kind of determine an increase just based on what their new fair market rent is going to go up to, and they give that cushion. But we have to see how do we get more money our way, because we're going to have to end up technically reducing the 410 for the PDD vouchers that we have now issued. So as those come off, they may be switching to PDD vouchers instead.
Yeah, and HUD came out with some more funding this year for new vouchers. And Boulder County, or Boulder Housing Partners got 8, LHAAB got 0. Anything, there's a formula, and if it was under 4, we just didn't get it.
So why do you think that we were under 4?
It's the way that they calculated the.
Like what factors are we not doing that Boulder did?
I think it's the size of the community that they look at. I just found this out last week, so.
Yeah, dig into that, because I think we're technically actually larger, because we have more registered voters than Boulder does now, which is interesting because the only reason they're larger now is because of their student population. But even then, we're just every year gaining on Boulder. So
I think we should certainly ask HUD, tell us why. What were the factors? Because that's, what are we?
We seem to be like never getting.
And we can show it.
Yeah,
we can
and
show
we're
it.
always leased up.
Yeah. So we need to push out on that.
what gets us back into the porting in question?
I know.
Well, and we need to kind of make that decision, because we'll have to put it in our new admin plan.
Thanks, Carrie. Thank you, Carrie. We are ready to.
So it's coming up.
So that's a bigger conversation that probably don't have time for today, but.
And so we thought we were going to get 431 to kind of give you an idea. So our admin that we get is on a per voucher basis. So if we only had 431, we need 431. We're at about $103 per voucher. So dropping down to 410, we've just lost $25,000 in a year because we had to drop down because of the fair market. But then, it's one triggers the next. So,
All right.
the more vouchers we get, it's going to go up to, the more admin we could get, and then maybe we could really herald this executive director. I mean, technically, if you look at it, if we were housing all of the Longmont's vouchers, you would have enough probably funding in admin for those vouchers to actually have a position like that.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
I mean,
So we are running a little bit over time, and I think we can just kind of go through everything really fast. What's public health and safety?
I'll be
fast, so I was gonna go into it more, but we're behind. Just a recap of 6 months, I think, attending Copy and Conversations, we've been able to accomplish more positive results working as a team, as some of these issues are more public safety and health issues versus management. Been able to really take care of issues not only in the community itself, but in the neighborhoods, like potholes, lighting, signage, etc. 3 of our senior communities have expressed high interest in Michelle Goldman, our fire commercial coming out. We've got her scheduled the end of this month in September for evac questions that continuously come up, even though we continuously talk to them about that every month. We have improved signage due to some requests, which I think is really helpful now that they're on every floor. Also going to start talking to Tracy and Lisa, doing a little bit more on our background side of things, especially when we get some folks that are referred by Hope or anything like that. I think we've been doing a very good job at this point, but I think we've seen some gaps that even if, I think this letting us see it on our side and then maybe bringing some things to life to the management side. And then last but not least, we just had a meeting yesterday regarding the gazebo in front of Village Place, and I'm taking on the project of getting that destroyed and adding parking, and we're figuring out on the other side what LHA is actually responsible for versus watering things, basically rewriting a contract, or if it's not called a contract, but just having something in writing so we can delineate between what the city's doing, or LDDA, and then LHA. So I have a question which I will bring up afterwards. It doesn't need to come in here about that. Well, that was it. Okay.
We're about to head into budget. Kendra's been working on it already and getting Hearthstone and Lodge in because it's a 202 property. Once we get that in, know that we're going to start the transition for next year of pulling that out of the 202 program. I will tell you, just based on the city budget, what we're seeing, expect inflation to be a significant impact within our budget. This year in the city budget, about $2.1 million is what we call level 1 expenses. And we move proportionally with that, what we've been seeing. So inflation is going to be a big hit. The next big hit is going to be compensation. We're still in that world. There was actually a really good article in the Denver Post, if you all saw it, about competition in government sector for employees. And it talked about it nationally, state, and local. We're still in it. Arlene's heard conversations about senior services, and we kind of answered it. They're not unique to any area of the organization right now in terms of filling positions. So we'll be working through that, but I would expect compensation and inflation to drive the budget this year. There may not be a lot of money to do anything else similar to what we're seeing.
Collier County raised the minimum wage. Does that affect you guys at all?
They didn't raise it. They're
Looking at it?
in conversations right now generally about that. Based on the way the new state law is written, you have to do it as a region. So there are multiple jurisdictions talking about it. Our council did say they want us to participate in the conversations. They put some caveats into that though. They want Longmont Economic Development Partnership and the Chamber to be part of the conversation because they want the business perspective there. They also want to look at Eastern Weld County because technically we're closer, and we know that decisions could impact employers in our community. I mean, literally just go the other side of Sandstone Ranch. And so we're really focused in on what that impact will be. It was interesting, I was in Breck this weekend, and this is something I'm going to dump into. There's a shop we've been going to for years, and she used to have employees, and she no longer has employees because she couldn't pay a living wage. And so it's now just her and her mother. And so those are things that we're wanting to get out of the business community to really understand. So, but we are moving, I think minimum wage is due to move again by state. And so We don't really have that issue for our staff members because they're all above it, but the market's moving. So we'll see what that looks like. So it may be a relatively simple budget year actually, in terms of what we're having to deal with. Some things that we're adjusting organizationally, based on seeing that, and this is all tentative at this point, as I'm starting to look at what I'm funding. I'm thinking about funding another programmer in senior services, but not splitting it, but just funding it out of the general fund, but still having them work with the LHA based on the capacity. There's older adults, it's within their mission, so it doesn't necessarily make sense. If I don't have to split it, I'm not going to. Another change that we're looking at making, and this is pretty complex, in that working with Zach in public safety, if I can fund a portion of a public information officer, then Zach can restructure to where he creates another neighborhood resource officer, and then we take an existing officer and put them in a position of managing more of our enforcement and housing work, or coordinating our enforcement and housing work across the organization, which so far that's in for me to do. And so, yeah, we'll be working on that, which actually creates more capacity to deal with many of these issues. But it also lets us coordinate into what we're doing in terms of how we utilize park rangers, parking enforcement, code enforcement, and other things. So it builds efficiency. So those are in right now, which actually makes a big difference in terms of what we're talking about here with the housing authority. So those are some of the big budget issues, but it's always subject to change because we're still struggling with how we approach HH and whether or not it passes. I mean, we programmed in a 50% reduction in property, in what our property tax would be, in order to manage what the impact is if HH passes. So
I just have one question, you probably answer it in 1 minute. The gentleman who keeps talking about, who has come to copy with council and has come to the council meetings, and I believe that his organization is called Legends Longmont Housing. Is he specifically interested in Bond Farm, or is he the entire city?
it's not, it's launch. Launch. And so no, what he's interested, you're talking about Shaquille.
Yeah.
The law, yeah. No, what he's interested in is just generally affordable and attainable housing in the community. I think he's focusing in on Bond Farm in the sense of, if we're going to make a difference in terms of what we're doing in housing, we have to build units, because there's no way for us to, I mean, if you look at Molly's presentation we did on our housing needs analysis, you need to build units, and that's his point. So no, it's global to the city. Speaking of that, we just put an affordable attainable housing project on steroids that's adding to the workload. That is adding to the workload of our development team. So, you know, we started talking about it related to the Mustang project with the Housing Authority. We moved it over to the city side. We're going to be going back to council. We had some pretty significant financial gaps to deal with. Tuesday, 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, the council said we could move some ARPA money over from affordable assisted living into attainable housing, which cleared the gap up really quick for us. And so we're looking at hopefully constructing 188 for sale units that will be all affordable and attainable housing. So
I should have mentioned that in the development updates, because the affordable assisted living was an LHA side project. Basically, we need to spend the ARPA money quickly. Land purchase is the way we were trying to do it to get an affordable assisted living project going, but it's a big one, and doing the land purchase and being part of the development deal might not be the best route to take based on the research we've done. It might be more just trying to work with existing providers and get preference on units. So in order to not get the ARPA money, hold back before we got it accomplished, we're going to redirect there and then look more on the programming side for affordable assisted living. Should mention that.
So yeah, that's a big change, and that's going to be another workload on most of the folks in this room. So yeah, we have to start going through land use and everything, and that'll kick off. Do what?
They all get nature reviews.
Yeah. So yeah, that's where we're moving. So it's kind of exciting. I think if we can pull it off, it'll be the largest development in the state of Colorado for affordable and attainable home ownership with deed restriction. I don't know of anything larger.
We need to really communicate that to the
Yeah.
public, because that's, everything positive, because so much is negative
Yeah.
anymore. Yeah, we need to communicate.
Yeah, and we're looking at preference for people who I-9 or W-2. We can't require it, but we're looking at a preference. I-9, W-2, Longmont. We're going to be moving around trying to figure out on the affordable side land trust piece and how that works. But in terms of the construction dollars, I think we figured it out. Prop 123, we've got to go in for that, so a fair amount of work going on.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have any comments?
I need to make one announcement as well.
Peters. I'm glad that went on, but I'll talk about it. So we got $10,000 for repeater per building, so Lisa and I, it was really Lisa's idea going.
Spring Creek Fall River.
Yeah, Spring Creek, internet access, sorry, practice that. You might have an update real quick on something much more reasonable and attainable.
Oh, right.
Yes.
Talking with Nextlight, they've always wanted to get internet in all of our common spaces, and so talking to Talia last week, she had the idea of maybe putting repeaters where if somebody has a phone and they're connected to the city network already, like the police officers can walk in their phone if they have a Wi-Fi calling, we get that service, so that gives them more bandwidth, or I guess connectivity in that building, along with our staff. Because right now we have a lot of, even us, we can't use our cell phones at Spring Creek Fall River, depending on what part of the building we're in. So Talia said if they put the service in the common areas and they get repeaters, which seems to be pretty cheap to just extend that internet down the hallways, that we would have better connectivity there for the residents and city staff.
Make sure you can port the repeaters to where you have a different channel for resident access. Because if you don't, then it won't. There's some technical issues I'm concerned about.
Okay.
So my announcement is I dropped off the gift that everyone contributed for Jean, and I gave her a house plant to go with it. She was extremely appreciative, and she wanted me to convey her thanks to the whole advisory board and her happiness with the skills and strengths that we have on this board, and she just wanted to say thank you, and she's super appreciative and happy. She feels like she's taking a like vacation. Yeah, a whole load off for her. So she just said wanted me to make sure I say thank you.
Hopefully, more items to learn more, and the line meeting. Fair backstory for lawyer that learned a lot of the first justice plan. You can talk, it's gonna help, discuss how to build an effective lease, particularly all the laws that place. Anybody interested in what tomorrow the lease looks like.
Tomorrow night, library, 6:30.
Of the library.
Okay.